CrossFit Games athletes have healthy bodies. What most people do when they see those athletes is go, no way. You can't look like that Adonis. You can't look like that type of a fitness model without being unhealthy, without taking performance-enhancing drugs. I've seen firsthand that you can. What these guys are doing is really new. It's been a decade and a half of people training this way, constantly varied function movements at high intensity. There's a magic to that. When you train for bodybuilding, you create hypertrophy, muscle growth. When you train for endurance events, you develop your cardiovascular system, amongst other things. The really cool thing about what happens when you do resistance training at a high heart rate is you elicit a very powerful hormonal response. That coupled with taking lifts to failure gets you jacked. Not only is it like the bodybuilding thing of like, I'm going to create hypertrophy and then I'm going to cut and just like starve myself. This gets to that aesthetic in a healthy way. That's a healthy body.
So I completely disagree with this one. CrossFit athletes have not got healthy bodies whatsoever. The top CrossFit athletes are all on gear. Now I have people who disagree with me on this, but all the evidence points to the fact that they're taking performance enhancing drugs. The whole sport of CrossFit is entirely based on your ability to recover, not just in between sets, but in between reps, in between exercises, and then in between different days and workouts. The very nature of how CrossFit works with all the programming, you've got weightlifting, you've got explosive work, you've got gymnastic work, you've got plyometrics, you've got bodyweight stuff, you've got endurance. There's a lot of components to it, and if you want to be competitive at the top levels of CrossFit, you need to be extremely skilled and really well trained within each one of these disciplines. So just to be able to handle that amount of training volume is pretty much impossible if you're doing it naturally. Just go to your local CrossFit gym. I guarantee you the people who are in the best shape there, who've got quite a bit of muscle on the frame, are one of two things. They're either not natural or they built the muscle prior to starting CrossFit. Every now and then, you might find a third outlier where someone is building muscle at the same time as them doing CrossFit. But if they're building muscle successfully, I guarantee they're not that really good at CrossFit. They haven't really built it to a high level and they're doing it extremely slow. Or once again, they're on steroids. Since day one, CrossFit athletes have tried to brand themselves as healthy because they used to push paleo diets and keto diets. And I even see a lot of vegan CrossFit athletes now. And even this guy compares CrossFit athletes and bodybuilders and says that the CrossFit athletes are healthier, when that's not really the point. Any athlete at the top of their game is not in a healthy state. Walking around at 8% body fat, training for 3 hours a day, beating down your joints, running non-stop, lifting weights constantly, and then layer on top of that, taking steroids. This is not a healthy way to live. Sure, you look incredible, but you cannot sit there and say that you are the pinnacle of health. Zach Tellender done a really good video covering this exact subject the other day. What caught me attention was one of the top comments. Let me tell you the inside scoop from someone who saw the sport grow back in 2010 when the CrossFit Open started. It was fun, exciting, and it was great to work out with other people and former athletes. Since then, I've known and seen athletes compete at this level for a long time, for multiple years in a row, without a single break, like training for a specific sport. Once I found out that athletes were taking PEDs, I really lost interest trying to be at the top because I don't like the fact that they have access to PEDs to beat the next person for a score or how fast you can do a workout. I was training multiple times a day for years and noticed my performance stayed the same and I would get injuries here and there. I've seen firsthand personal trainers who I personally know train for CrossFit for a few years and go in for competitions, and they got absolutely slaughtered, and these trainers were in fantastic shape. You don't realize how much ego comes into it. People will happily take gear so they can get a little plastic trophy for a small time CrossFit competition. So what do you think the people at the top are doing where they're making hundreds of thousands of dollars? I know there's some CrossFit athletes now who are millionaires. You think they're going to risk all that money just so they can say they're natural? Of course not. I say all this, but the only way to truly know if people are taking steroids is having strict testing like the UFC with USADA. Unfortunately, in the latest games, they only tested 30 athletes out of 150, and I think they only tested them a couple times. When you compare that to some UFC athletes where they tested 10, 15, 20, sometimes even 30 times a year, it's just not really on, is it? The problem with testing is it's extremely expensive, and maybe CrossFit doesn't have the money just yet. I just wanted to talk about this because every time I mention about steroids being in CrossFit, I get a lot of pushback. People completely disagree with me, but you've got to look at the evidence right in front of you, and if it looks like a fish, smells like a fish, then it probably is a fish. I don't even know if that's a saying, I've just made it up now. But let me know what you think down below. Do you think all these top CrossFit athletes are taking gear? Have you tried CrossFit or currently do CrossFit and successfully built a significant amount of muscle whilst doing CrossFit? Let me know in the comments. Make sure you subscribe, we upload every single day, and I'll see you tomorrow.